Here he is back from vacation, and we're just so very pleased the Patersons were able to get to Hawaii and home safely. Our Canucks reporter from Rinkwide Vancouver, Mr. Jeff Paterson. How we doing, Jeff?
Doing well. Rested, relaxed. Hey, Hawaii at any time of year. We'd never done it in the summer before. Some different options, although, climate there really never changes. So, it was just, but yes, originally we were scheduled to spend 10 days in Maui. That had to change for obvious reasons. We adapted, and it was a minor inconvenience for us compared to what the people in Maui, and then watching from afar as Kelowna burned. So, just incredible times here in this month of August.
Yeah, and thinking of everybody, both in Hawaii and in the Okanagan, Shuswap, who are still dealing with fires in the aftermath. Jeff, we had this hit plan scheduled several days ago, and lo and behold, here comes Elias Pettersson with the bombshell about his contractual status and how it's not going to be resolved this summer, and it sounds like it may last the season. What is your interpretation of what you heard from the Canucks star centerman?
Yeah, making waves on a boat with Friedman there in Stockholm. Look, it puts the pressure right back on the Vancouver Canucks. And I never anticipated that there was going to be a deal done prior to the start of the season. His agent had spoken, obviously he's got Paterson and JP Barry, and JP Barry had said at the outset of the summer that they wanted to step back, they were going to take their time, that he had other players and issues to deal with in and around free agency, and that he thought maybe towards the end of the summer, there would be some conversations with the Vancouver Canucks. Now, it certainly sounds like those have not started yet. It is late August. Training camp is just under a month from now. But, the quotes from Elias Pettersson certainly sound like in no hurry, no rush, going to take a wait and see here. We've addressed this before. We thought that this guy's a shrewd operator. Even at the age of 24, he'll turn 25 in November. But this will be his sixth NHL season, and we know that he's been in the playoffs once, and even then the team didn't qualify for the playoffs. They were invited to the larger tournament in the bubble in Edmonton. He was exceptional in his first look at NHL postseason action, 18 points in 17 games, but he wants to win. He's said it before, and I think this now says, all right, I'm in a position here where I'm going to be patient. I need to see that these changes that this hockey club has made in the offseason, they're going to produce and yield the results that everybody hopes they do, and that this is a better team than perhaps he has ever played on in his time in the National Hockey League. So he's not rushing into anything. I guess the one quote that jumped out at me was the, short term or long term. I mean, he leaves it open there that I think everybody thinks the Canucks want the max deal, and they probably do, but it takes two sides to negotiate. That is part of negotiation. He has options, and it sounds like he's keeping all those options open.
He's betting on himself, it would appear. And you do wonder, too, what the Canucks are thinking and how scared they are. Not that he's necessarily going to leave per our poll question, but just about what they're going to have to pay him ultimately, because he's also a two-way player. So it's not like they could even take him to arbitration and poke holes in his game, a la maybe a JT Miller kind of a player. There's really not a lot to work with against Elias Pettersson at this point.
No, and Sebastian Aho got his deal done in Carolina, and I think Aho was always on the low end of the comparables. He's a terrific player, but Pettersson's had higher individual seasons. He's higher point per game guy. Aho's got more of a playoff track record, but even then, he's never had that one playoff. And we know that Carolina, they just haven't been able to get over the hump with this group. And I think any way you stack it up, Elias Pettersson, has the numbers that would suggest that the Aho deal would present a baseline, but that Pettersson would exceed that. And, no surprise, we talked about it at the time, Carolina managed to keep Aho under $10 million. And I just think there was something about that $10 million threshold. There's no way in my mind that Pettersson's new deal starts with anything less than a 10. And in a platform year, if he backs up his 102-point season with another one, then something in that 11 neighborhood, I don't think is out of the question. Of course, with Paterson and JP Barry, nothing is going to slip through the cracks with these guys. They know that the salary cap is expected to go up. And so why wouldn't you want to see what the parameters are and just how much of that piece of the pie you can get for your client. So again, I think that factors into the waiting game here. The one caveat for me is, though, that the last time Elias Pettersson played into the final year of a contract, it was his entry-level deal. It was also the All-Canadian Division year. Things were different. COVID, obviously. But he got off to a sluggish start, and then he got hurt. And we all remember that the following year, both he and Quinn Hughes stayed away from training camp as they awaited new deals. And that was that 25-game stretch that ultimately led to the dismissal of Travis Green. And Elias Pettersson got off to a brutal start, and he admitted after the fact that the contract weighed on him more than he thought it would. Now, he's older. He's got, I think a better sense of who he is as a hockey player, sort of the dynamics all around the contract. I want to believe that he'd be able to process all of this, but, he's a human being, and we are talking about massive numbers, whether it's a shorter term deal or if it's a max contract. Like, he is setting himself up here with this contract for the rest of his life. So, that's a lot for a young guy who, again, isn't even 25 years of age. He's admitted that coming out of his first deal affected him. How is all of this going to impact him? Can he compartmentalize? And for a team that has laid it out there bare that, it's playoffs or bust this year. Now, we've heard that from them before, and obviously they've busted, but they need this guy. They need this guy to be their leader. They need him to be the player that he was last year. And that's why it would have been terrific, I think, for everybody had they been able to get pen to paper and just put this behind them. Instead, it's a storyline that's going to dominate this season until a decision is made.
Great institutional knowledge there, Jeff. You're quite right about the last time and his contract. He played on the final year of his deal and what he said by way of explanation for that slow start. Let me just ask you the Bodog poll question flatly. Are you scared he's going to want out?
I'm not going to say I'm scared at this point. Certainly recognize the playing field, Matthew Tkachuk and others. Different sport, but we saw a guy like Julian Gressel recently with the Whitecaps, and Blake would know this, that, for family reasons, he wanted to play elsewhere. That I think we're seeing star athletes take control of their careers more than ever before. And so whether it's wanting a change of scenery, whether it's wanting to put yourself in a position to win, whether it's family considerations, all of those types of things, these athletes recognize that they can force the hand of the team that they play for. And so I'm wary of it. The doomsday scenario. And trust me, I'm not there yet, but we're in this discussion now. Mm-hmm. It's not so much what if Elias Pettersson ultimately wants to go down the Matthew Tkachuk road. It's how quickly would Quinn Hughes be out that same door right after him. And I think there are a lot of people that believe that Quinn Hughes already has an eye to, uniting with his brothers in New Jersey and getting an opportunity at some point in their careers to all play together. If Pettersson goes, I do think that it signals, you are in a full-on rebuild of the rebuild, if you will. And that's the concern, because I think we all want to see what can these guys do. We got the one taste of them in postseason hockey. They all passed the test. Coming out of the bubble, they were a sexy team. They were sort of one of the teams people were talking about around the National Hockey League. And then that Thanksgiving weekend happened where all the free agents walked out the door. That sort of changed the path and the direction of the hockey club. So I recognize all the scenarios. I'm not ready to get worried yet. I do think that Elias Pettersson likes the city of Vancouver. I think he really likes a lot of his teammates. He enjoys being a star player, all those types of things. But ultimately, you think about it, guys, he's going to be 25 in the fall. If he plays till he's 35, we're talking 10 years, a decade. It seems like forever, but if you boil it right down, that's 10 chances to win a Stanley Cup. Yep. Life moves quickly in professional sports. And so if this team was to stumble out of the gate yet again, throw up all over itself, absolutely, I could see Elias Pettersson saying, look, I've given you guys 6 really good years, some of the prime years of my life. It's just not happening here at that stage. I could see him seeking other opportunities, but I'm not prepared to get there yet. I want to see what the changes that the hockey club has made, a full season of Rick Tocchet, all those types of things. And if Elias Pettersson can stay at the star level that he was at last year, there are reasons to believe that this team can finally get some traction and move it in the right direction. But ultimately, it's all talk right now in late August. They've got to put it on the ice starting on October the 11th.
What do you think this does with regards to the captaincy? And is there any world now where you can name Elias captain for this season after this declaration?
Not until you have an extension in hand. I just think those two things go hand in hand here, that there's no way you can make that commitment to him from the organizational side with the captaincy and then ultimately have him decide that this isn't the place that he wants to be long term. I just don't think that, obviously not.
Who does that look bad on, though?
Does that mean 3 A's, Jeff, or do you think you turn it over to Quinn?
Well, I've always been in the Elias Pettersson in my world is the captain of the Vancouver Canucks.
I'm with you there.
But this can change that conversation, certainly. And I have time for the people that make the strong argument that Quinn Hughes has, exhibited all of these leadership skills late last season, talking up and standing up for Tanner Pearson, and a guy that, wants to win and is one of the best players. Like, I'm not this isn't an anti-Quinn Hughes to be the next captain stance. It's just I've always felt that Elias Pettersson would be the next captain of the Vancouver Canucks. But I just don't think he can go there right now with the uncertainty. And again, like, it's well within his rights. Like, I've had so many people on social media just just give him what he wants and get it done. But it doesn't work that way. Like, there are factors at play here. And one of them is the long-term success of the Vancouver Canucks. So, they could put a blank check in front of him, and obviously that would offer him all the security that he would ever need for his lifetime, but it doesn't guarantee the chance to win in the short term or in the long run. And I do think that that's important to him. This has to have been soul-crushing, all of these seasons of, stepping up and doing what he's done, and last year getting to 100 points and still not a sniff of the playoffs. So for the people that seem to think this is on the Canucks to just put a check in front of Elias Pettersson, it doesn't work that way. I think he is, protecting his options at this point and doesn't want to lock himself into something that ultimately, now that's not to say he could lock himself in and they could still trade him, but this, I think, creates a few more options for him just by holding back right now and not putting that pen to paper.
Who does it look bad on if you give him the captaincy now and it hits a snag? Like, to me, you give him the captaincy, maybe, and I'm exploring the space here. I'm going to
give you a wide berth to explore the space.
You give him the captaincy.
Sounds like a Blake Price tangent, Jeff, that you and I are going to be forced to respond to.
You give him the captaincy, and all of a sudden now the pressure's on him of, are you going to walk away from a captaincy now? Do
you think he'll accept it, though?
Well, he watched the last captain recognized that he couldn't get the contract that he was looking for here in Vancouver, and that he couldn't play playoff hockey here in Vancouver as soon as he could elsewhere. And so, I think there's a real life experience there. It's not quite apples to apples, but yeah, I mean, if the Canucks, to me, it looks like a bit of a desperation lifesaver ploy that you're throwing at him, trying to get him to. But again, I don't think it changes the conversation if he and his agents feel that this thing just isn't working for the Vancouver Canucks, whether he's got the C on or not. I still think that he's going to want to explore other options. But, I want to be careful when I say this, and I want people to hear, like, I'm not saying that he wants out. I'm saying that this is such a pivotal season for this organization. Guys, if they don't, and we've talked about this before, but if they don't make the playoffs in the spring of 2024, it's going to have been a full decade between playoff dates at Rogers Arena from the spring of 2015. If they don't get there in 2024, then the next time after that is 2025. Like, it's just mind-boggling to think that so many of these guys have been here as this organization has spun its wheels, and it hasn't. Like, part of me surprised that there hasn't been one of these guys that's wanted out sooner. That the patience that'll, whether it was Horvat or Besser or, now Hughes and Petterson, like, in this day and age, I'm a little surprised that somebody hasn't forced the issue, to this point.
What about 3As, Jeff? Take that on. Because for me, if they go with 3As, that sort of is their tell that they really want Elias to be the captain, but they can't do so under the current contractual situation. Do you think there's a world where they would go 3 alternates, no captain this year?
Yeah, I do. I think Rick Tocchet sort of was non-committal at the end of season press conference when he was pushed about, don't tell us who necessarily, but will there be a captain? And he kind of waffled a little bit, and he spoke at lengths about this leadership group. And there's no doubt that Petterson and Hughes and Miller comprise that leadership group. We'll see if anybody else sort of makes their way in, but talked about how much he was going to lean on them. They've let Jason King go as the power play coach. I think Talkin's going to take on some of that, but he also said, he wants to defer to the players themselves to have more of a hand and a stake in, what they do. Those are the guys that, are the machine that make the power play run. And so, de facto playing coaches in some sense there. So could I see 3As? Yeah. I mean, that's kind of how they operated down the stretch after Horvat was traded. So I could see this being a bit of a buffer year without a full-time captain, but I would read it the same way you would, Matt, that if that's the decision that they go with, that it probably tells you what they'd like to do, but they just don't feel comfortable stitching that C onto Pettersson's jersey at this point.
Marvelous having you back and talking Canucks with you, J-Pat. You're the best in the business on that. Thank you for this, and we'll catch up next week.
All right, guys.
We'll catch up Friday. You're in for me on Friday. You'll be in with Blake or on Friday.
Yeah, you bet. All right, we'll talk to you then.
This is a Carson Price clip brought to you by Bodog. Make a play at Canada's choice for free casino games, sports odds, and poker strategies.